I now call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. First order of business, we're going to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Director Potts to lead us in that.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Potts. Up next will be the board priorities. Director Potts, would you please read the board priorities?
Priorities. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impact of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you, Director Snyder. Would you please read the mission and vision statements?
Our mission statement reads, to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. And our vision statement reads, education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and the community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Snyder. Now we will move into public hearings. We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications, approval on the 95% plans and specifications for the masonry improvements at Adams project as published in the Quad City Times on August 13th, 2021. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications, approval of the 95% plans and specifications for the McKinley restroom repair project as published in the Quad City Times on August 13th, 2021. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. We will now hold another public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications, approval of the 95% plans and specifications for the Williams restroom on the lower level project as published in the Quad City Times on August 13th, 2021. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications, approval of the 95% plans and specifications for the West Kimberley Complex roof replacement project as published in the Quad City Times on August 13th, 2021. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. On our agenda, we're going to switch it up. We're going to go and do the superintendent report first, and then we will go into the presentations. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you very much. Hot mic. Thank you very much, President Goza. Board of Directors, I have to tell you this story. I think it was about a week ago. We were in a Leadership Academy, which is picture a room, and it has all of our principals in it and their leadership teams. And we're all learning about exactly what we're going to focus on for the school year. But all that we kept in our mind was the score of this Little League game halfway across America. And when we watched them pull it off, everyone in the whole place was like, yeah, this is awesome. And so got a chance to talk with President Goza, who those of you know is very much a huge Little League supporter in our area. And he says, we need to get our champions in front of our community and school board to hear from them. So today we have Coach Brian Grip with us. And Brian, I know you've brought some of our champs with us today to introduce and kind of talk about the journey and the story. And it looks like we have some very proud parents in the audience too. I know when I saw the champs in here, I know it filled my bucket. So we're very happy that you're here and excited. So Coach, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium, and there's a little button on here. When it turns green, just speak into that. So boys, if you wouldn't mind going over with your coach, he's gonna talk about you and your experience and give you an opportunity to talk to the board. And our board's gonna ask you questions too. So head on over. Yep. Take it away, Coach.
All right, I think it's on. So I'm Brian Grip, board member of Southeast Little League. President Mason couldn't make it tonight, but he wanted to send his wishes to everybody. As board member, I'm representing Southeast, and also I was a coach on the 11U All-Star team. We went to Des Moines for our regionals, and we won. And two of those players are Mitch Kelly and my son Jackson Grip. And then from our 12U team that won state out in Sioux City, Riley Alinger and Alex Sullivan. So we've got two from the 11s and two from the 12s. Sadly, none of our 10-year-olds could make it, but we also won state at Southeast Little League for 10, 11, and 12, which is quite the accomplishment. We can't believe it. For one of these teams to win is truly an honor for the city of Davenport and Davenport Little League, but for all three of them to win it in the same year is pretty amazing. So hats off to all these guys. 3 state champs. The 12U, I think the score that you might be really, when they won state, they got to go to regionals. So only 12-year-olds get to go potentially to the Little League World Series. So they went from Sioux City, Iowa, came back, and they went to outside of Indianapolis. I think it was Whitestown, Indiana. And they were so close to reaching that goal of going to the Little League World Series. They were within, I think, 1 run of the final game, and these boys couldn't have represented us better. And they just had an amazing season all around, both in Little League and then on in All-Stars. So my hat's off to them. I'll let them say a few words if they'd like to. Jackson. Riley. Come on.
There he is.
There we go. Let him hear you.
So just let's start with this. Say your name, school you go to, and your favorite part about your All-Star experience.
My name is Riley Ellinger. I go to McKinley, and my favorite part about it was spending time with my teammates and playing baseball.
Outstanding.
Jackson. You guys can say a few words. It's kind of cool.
There we go.
My name is Jackson Grip, and the one thing I liked about winning state was having fun in the hotel and playing wall ball and winning state.
Now we broke the ice for you. Now you can say a few words. That's all.
My name's Mitchell Kelly. I go to Bluegrass Elementary, and for winning state was pretty cool. Especially getting to be on the team and pitching in that championship game was really cool. Thank you.
I'm Alex Sullivan. I go to Sudlow, and my favorite part about winning state was spending time with my teammates and being able to spend time with them.
So as you can imagine, we had 3 teams, I think at least 12 kids on each team. So these are some of the representatives from Davenport, but we also had kids from other other cities. And just a few words about these 4 particular and all of our kids on our championship teams. They just really exemplified what it is to be a good student and a good teammate, team player, and great for their coaches. So my hat's off to everybody. Thanks for having us here today. Thank you. Anything else, Keith?
At this time, if any board members would like to make any comments towards our champions, now's the time.
I'll go. Congratulations. Obviously, I rep North Little League, but hey, good for you guys and good for you going all the way. I can't believe none of you said you had a good time with your parents on the way up there and stuff like that. But in parents, for you, thank you as well. It's a big commitment for that. You got practices, games you all know, and staying in hotels and everything like that. So kudos to all of you. Kudos to you all in the 11s and the 10s. I hope you do it again next year. It kind of, at least you lucked out. They didn't let anybody really get to go and watch the Little League World Series. So, and you had to have a big, long Q-tip stuck up your nose every day and get tested. So that probably wasn't very fun for all those guys. But you made it all the way to Indiana, so that's what counts. You guys did a great job. Hats off to you, and thanks for representing Davenport schools and Davenport. So appreciate you all coming, and thank you. Director Beck.
Congratulations to you guys for winning, all of your winning. I'm really impressed. And are all of you planning on continuing to play baseball at school through junior high and high school? Yeah, awesome. The future looks good then. Congratulations.
I'm sure we're going to take a photo right up here with the school board members. But before we do that, I want to echo the parents. What an incredible journey. The Little League journey, you play one game a day and it stretches out. And I bet you guys were wondering what to do with all that vacation time. Well, there you go. So thank you so much for supporting them. And that really shows how much you care deeply about our students. But to you guys and to anybody that's listening online, because you guys are going to be YouTube stars now. So this will be, as Dan always says, this will be on YouTube and you can share with your friends. I want you to remember one thing, and from this moment forward, you're a champion. You know what it's like to be the very best in the state of Iowa, and Little League is very, very competitive. And so from here on out, that feeling that you have of being a champion will carry with you all the way to your 43 years old sitting at a table like this. Because somewhere along the line, everybody's been a champion and you know what it feels like. This is you know what it feels like. You know what it took to get there. Never forget that. No one will ever be able to take that away from you. I'm so proud of the work that you guys did and your families did. So thank you so much. So if you wouldn't mind, Coach, let's bring them right up in front of this screen up here, and our board's going to come up and we're going to take a picture with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not that they don't have fun.
All right, now we will move on to presentations. The first presentation we have is for the SRO data. I believe we have some guests here, and I'll let you introduce them.
Yeah, so I'd like to thank Sarah Ott and Lieutenant Smith for coming tonight to do a second presentation of our SRO data. So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight to share some survey and monthly statistics. I think heading into this, it's important to know that we've looked at this report, we vetted it with community stakeholders. They gave us some really good feedback. Lieutenant Smith and Sarah, they took the feedback and adjustments, and that's exactly what our MOU is intended to do, to create a partnership that allows us to have a program that adjusts and meets the needs of our school and community. So thank you guys so much for coming tonight to share this data. And I know that they're very thankful too, because I believe the last time we asked them to present, they were the last agenda item on the discussion. And so they got a payback for us when they put us on the City Hall agenda. So
Sure did.
So thank you guys for being with us today. And Sarah, I'll turn it over to you and Lieutenant Smith.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time to hear this tonight. So we just wanted to provide a very quick update for you guys. As Superintendent Sheckloff said, the SRO MOU was approved late last spring, and really there were two deliverables that came from that MOU that we want to highlight and report back out to you guys today. So the first deliverable that was outlined in the MOU was an annual survey that would be administered in the schools where there are uniformed police officers. And so that was done last spring through the school district. The school district is responsible for administering that survey. And then the second deliverable from the MOU is the monthly statistic reporting that will begin with this school year. So the statistics for September will be reported out in October of this year and then continue on monthly from there. So as I said, the school district is responsible for the administration of the survey. It was given to both students and staff at the end of last year, I believe in May, and we had about 1,500 students and staff take this survey. So the results that you're going to see are representative of those 1,500 students and staff. So I'm going to highlight 3 questions from the survey for you guys today, because that kind of gives an overview of where the program is at the beginning of the MOU. One of the things that we wanted to do with this survey is really take a base temperature for where things are at with the SROs and their relationships to their school buildings and to both the students and the staff that are in those buildings. So the first question that was asked is, how do you feel about your personal safety having a uniformed police officer in your school? So one of the things that came up in conversation as we had these working groups around the MOU was not just the safety of the school building, having SROs in the school building, but also the perceived safety of the students and the individuals having a uniformed police officer. So the first question was really meant to address that. And I don't know, are you running this?
No, I'm running it, so just say what you need.
All right, if you want to skip forward 2 slides. Man in the back. There we go, maybe. One more. All right, there we go. So how do you feel about your personal safety having a uniformed police officer in your school? So we broke this out by students and staff, and as you can see, the majority of students and staff felt either safe or very safe, with another large percent being neutral. A very small percentage said either very unsafe or unsafe, from both students and staff. So we feel really good about this data. We weren't sure what to expect. I think there was a lot of discussion, what people thought students were going to say, what people thought staff were going to say, and that's why we did a survey, because we wanted to know what they actually thought about having a uniformed police officer in their buildings. If you can move to the next slide, please. The second question, how do you feel about the safety and security of your school as a whole having a uniformed police officer in your school? So again, the first question was about the perceived individual safety of students and staff. This is the perceived safety of the school building as a whole. And again, very favorable results, both from students and staff, feeling very safe or safe, with another large percent being neutral across both categories. Next slide, please. The last question I want to share with you is we asked both students and staff to rate their interactions with uniformed police officers in their schools. This, I will say, was a little interesting to receive this back. You can see that students had very positive or positive interactions, about 35% of the total, but there was a large percentage, 57%, were neutral. And so we've had some discussions on what does that mean? Does that mean it's neither good nor bad, or does that mean they haven't had any exposure to the SRO in their school? It may be that a large percentage of students have had no exposure to the SRO in their school building. But when you look at staff, they have a very large percentage of either very positive or positive. And again, neutral's in there too, but there's probably a lot more interaction with staff in the SROs than there are students with the SROs. And so again, this isn't good or bad necessarily, but interesting for us to then dive into why did so many students answer this as neutral. Next slide. So the other thing that we will be doing, so that was part of the annual survey. The second deliverable that I talked about is the monthly statistics that we will begin tracking starting in September. And so we wanted to show you what you guys can expect moving forward using some data from last school year using the month of May. We're tracking 3 pillars, again, safety, education, and relationships. Those 3 pillars are outlined in our MOU. We talked about them extensively during that process, as those are the 3 things that we want our SROs to be focusing on when they are in our schools. The statistics will be posted monthly, both on the city and the school district website. Like I said, September statistics will be posted hopefully by about October 8th once they can be compiled. And really, it serves as a baseline. The annual review serves as a baseline, but then the monthly statistics can help us make ongoing decisions to the program. So if we see a trend through the monthly statistics, that's real-time information that we can then take and make adjustments as necessary to the program. So if you want to pull up the PDF that I have as well, this is what the monthly statistics are going to look like. So again, we have safety, education, and relationships as our 3 pillars. And so I will explain the 3 pillars, and then if you guys have specific questions, Lieutenant Smith can talk about those as well and help answer those. But I want you to think specifically under safety as a funnel. So one of the things that we wanted to highlight for the community, we want to be very transparent in what our SROs are doing in the schools. And so we wanted to share all the calls for services that our SROs are responding to. But one of the discussion points that was brought up in these working groups and is outlined in the MOU is that behavioral issues are the responsibility of school staff. They are not the responsibility of SROs. And so we wanted to be able to break down those calls for service and then break them down whether they are handled by the officer or whether they're referred back to be handled by the school. And so you can see in May, there was 147 calls for service, and this is aggregated across all the buildings. So this is for all buildings that have SROs in them. 147 calls for service across all buildings. 97 of them were handled by the officer. 50 of them, or about a third of them, were referred back to be handled by school staff and administration. So of those 97, we're then going to go down the funnel. What happened to those 97 incidents in which an SRO responded? So of those 97, 89 of them, the vast majority of them, were handled by the officer without any other system involvement, without any other escalation. Again, this is something that we're very proud of. I think this was a concern that we heard from the community. They wanted to make sure that when SROs became involved in situations that they weren't immediately escalating the situation. And I think you can see by the statistics that that's not the case, that often SROs are coming into situations, they're de-escalating them, and then nothing else comes from that. There's no charges or arrests or things like that for the vast majority of the cases. Of those 97, so 89 were resolved by the officer. 5 of those, so of the, quick mental math here, 8 that were not resolved by the officer, 5 of those were diverted to diversion, and those students went through the diversion program in lieu of charges, and 3 charges were filed. And of those 3 charges, 2 of those had use of force within them. So we want to show this kind of as a funnel so that the community can understand what our SROs are doing, and can be proud of the work that they're doing when they are resolving the vast majority of these conflicts with no escalation with the students. The second and third pillars, education and relationships, again, very important for our SROs in our school buildings. And so we wanted to highlight the classes that they're teaching, and then the relationship building that they're doing with these students. So mediations, that informal conflict resolution that SROs are doing every day with our students, and sometimes even parents that come to the schools and have issues, they're also mediating with the parents as well. Home visits to ensure that children are safe when needed. Handle with care notifications. I know that's a great partnership program between the district and the police department, and the SROs are a part of that as well. So this is what I'll call the cover page of the monthly statistics that'll be going out every month. We'll then have kind of a more bland Excel sheet behind it, because I know people are interested in learning the demographics and things of that nature of some of these charges as well. Those will be aggregated into a less fancy, I would say, sheet, but this really helps at a glance the community understand on a monthly basis what our SROs are doing in our schools. So if you have any questions, I'll let Lieutenant Smith answer those.
Director Beck.
I have questions. So I have two questions. So when you say resolved by the officer, right, that means there's nothing's happening with the justice system, right? It's completely free of that as long as it's diversion or resolved by the officer. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So I could come up with examples all day long. I'd equate that to being dispatched to a home for like loud music. So you go and you give a warning, and then there's nothing ever becomes of that.
Okay.
So that category, the officer may take a report, and there may actually be a report filed, but any further investigation or anything like that, there's nothing further is going on from that. It's handled right there by the officer.
Okay. And so when a report's taken like that, I mean, I guess I just want to make sure that we're not like putting names on lists somewhere that might come up again for no good reason, right?
Correct. So when we talk about juvenile records, we're talking about juvenile charges that actually get forwarded to juvenile court. In a report, none of that happens.
Okay.
It was in a police record system, but as far as a criminal record, nothing
Okay.
comes of that.
Perfect. And then my other question or comment, I guess. So Sarah, you said you have demographic breakdown of all of these incidents. I think that is something that is really important to look at, because we want to make sure, I mean, ideally we'd have zero of everything, right? That's not realistic. So we want to make sure that what is happening in our schools is proportional to the students that we have in our schools. And so I think I would just emphasize that, maybe even include that somewhat in the fancy cover. I do like this format. It's very easy to read and follow, but make sure that it's right out there as much as we may not want it to be. I think that's something that's really, at least in my understanding, is really important to the community. And so I think that could go a long way also towards helping us reduce our disproportionality. So thank you guys for this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Director Hayes.
I don't know if I missed it or not, but can you tell us approximately how many individuals were surveyed? And it's more very positive for the most part, but for the unsafe individuals and the negative and the very negative, are we addressing that in any way?
That might be a question for Dr. Klipsch.
Yes, so of the surveys, obviously we didn't want to put there's no names attached to any of it. So we can't go to those specific students because we kept it an anonymous survey. But we did look at, of the negative responses of this unsafe or very unsafe, like I mean, I think there was maybe 30 or so total out of all of it, which is those percentages, like who those students were, and that will be one of those pieces that our crisis response team still has to determine. Okay, so based off of this, we did look at the demographics of them, and we found that it was actually fairly proportional still, so it wasn't one predominant group over another. But what do we want to do with that information? So what other steps can we take? And that would be in discussion with our SROs to ensure, because while 2% overall as well, like we want to make sure that those 2% are addressed. Like what could we do differently, as Director Beck said, to have it 100% safe or very safe? So those discussions will be continuing. Going back though, we're not able to identify the specific students because it is anonymous. If we were, we would be able to go to those students. But again, that's not the intent of the survey, so we have to be cautious about that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all you have? Director Poston?
I was wondering if we could have a breakdown as far as high school, intermediate, elementary. Is that possible?
Yes, sir. All of that information, that aggregate information, that data is going to be broken down by school. I will caution you though, with one thing that we have found as we run this data is when there's only 3 charges amongst 8 schools or 5 schools that it can get pretty specific. And if we start putting charges out like that, people are going to know who was charged with that. So that's definitely a hurdle that we're going to have to get around.
Director Beck.
Sorry, sort of along those lines, I think I understand, like, we have to respect the privacy of individuals. Maybe Director Poston might be willing to accept, breakdown of the larger numbers, like the calls for service or something like that, so we can see if they're all coming from one school or the other. That might be helpful, and that hopefully will shield people from, for the most part, from finding out who they are.
Yep, that's something that we're working with Dr. Clipshawn, and so we will hopefully get that resolved here in the next week or two. Just wanting to be sensitive to the privacy of these students, but then also wanting to be transparent with the community. There's a balancing act there, and so we're actively working with Dr. Clipshawn on that.
Okay.
I'll ask a couple. The calls for service. That's not all necessarily like students and stuff. That might be adults causing an issue in the building, or is this all specifically just for students?
That is one big bucket. So that could be
Okay.
parents coming onto property, that could be calls internal, that could be teachers calling to the classroom. That is the big bucket. So
Okay.
911 calls and administrative calls, all the above.
Okay. Is there a way to like break that down?
Yes.
I understand if you can't. I mean, but like if it's 147 calls and say 80 of those calls were a parent, that makes it look like it's our kids that are doing that. So that it would be, I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that.
Yeah, we could break down the calls for service by type, and that may give us some direction. Whether we include that in the aggregate data or not, it's possible. Or how the 911 call comes in. We have the data, so it's just a matter of running it to see what you. I want you to have the data to make the decisions, so if that's what you need, we can get that.
Right. Well, and at the same time, it's not all of the calls of service are for our kiddos. It's
correct.
So that would be good to know too. That kind of helps out a little bit.
One thing we were trying to show was the activity of our SROs. So that's
right. No, I understand that, and it's a work in progress. I like it very much. You guys did a great job on it. Can you go over what the handle with care is? Because I'm sure some people don't know what that is, and that way it kind of you give a breakdown of everybody what that means.
So, Handle with Care is a cooperative program between the school district and our police department. So if a child has a traumatic incident where they come into contact with law enforcement outside of school, so say you know, there's a domestic dispute between the parents or things like that, where a child is there to witness that. The police department then communicates that to the school district so that the teachers and the building administrators know, hey, this child had a traumatic incident the night before and may need some extra care. And so really it is to protect the children and to ensure that the adults, the safe adults in their life, can be able to be there for them and understand maybe some of the behaviors that might come from being a part of any sort of trauma in the home or outside of the school.
Can I add to that real briefly? It's really a great trauma-informed practice that our community does to partners, because we know that trauma impacts so many things. I mean, that's our work, right? And this gives our buildings, and it only goes to administrators and counselors, so it's not like an all-call, because again, that's confidentiality piece on some of those pieces, but it's just, and it doesn't go into specifics, just that there was an incident, and to handle that student with care, just to be on the lookout, keep your eyes open. Doesn't mean you call the student to the office and grill him or her or anything like that. Just, hey, this kid had a rough night. Be aware so that you can, just address that.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, is that include the teacher gets notified as well? You said administrator and counselor.
So that's what I was stealing the microphone from. So from a building standpoint, I would receive those as it would come to the principal and it went to the guidance counselor. And when I would receive it, then I would look at who the student's name and what adult potentially could come in contact with that student during that day. And so what I would do is I would forward, because again, it just says, little Benny Driscoll, handle with care. That's all it'll say. So then I would forward that and say, please be aware that potentially a student could have, you are not to probe, ask questions, or anything like that. But if you notice that this student seems a little off, see if they, if there's someone they would like to talk to or something like that. Just be extra sensitive right now. So it would be, to Dr. Klipsch's point, this doesn't go to the whole staff. It would be up to the guidance counselor and or the building administrator to say who is going to be in contact with that student today, because that person should be aware. That way they're just being sensitive and, to Ms. Ott's point, handling them with care that day. Extra special care.
Thank you for that explanation. I want to say whoever came up with that program, that is awesome, a great partnership, and that is a huge thing. Just 3 little words does a lot. So thank you very much. That's why I wanted to bring that up. I already knew that from being part of some of those discussions, but I think it's nice for everyone else to know that, and everyone watching on YouTube and everything like that. Are there any other questions? Well, I guess you guys knocked it out of the park on short notice, huh?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for keeping us
Run.
updated on this stuff. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, our next presentation is a presentation with Lulac, and I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Yes, with us tonight we have Mr. Reyes from Lulac, our local Lulac, which is one of the longest standing Lulacs in the state of Iowa. We're very proud to have a partnership with them. We have a standing meeting to really work on the agenda items that we have shared together. And so in our last meeting, I asked Mr. Reyes if he would come and speak to us about the priorities of Lulac. And then we also have some special student guests with us here today to talk about their leadership in our community. So if you guys wouldn't mind coming on up, I would really appreciate it. So I'll turn it over to you, and thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. My name is Michael Reyes. I'm from the League of United Latin American Citizens. Everybody knows us by our acronym LULAC. We're part of a national organization. We're a civil rights organization. We're actually the largest and the oldest Latino civil rights organization in the United States. We're governed by regions, vice presidents, and then we have a state director over our councils. In Iowa, we have 23 councils. Davenport is one. And in the LULAC network, Davenport holds the distinction of being the largest council in the whole LULAC, not just the state, but the whole United States. So that's out of Davenport, Iowa, where you would think that the Latino population is only about 175,000 across the state, that we would have the largest council in the network. So with me today, I have a couple of our youth council members, and we'll be speaking or hearing from them a little bit later. Get the next chart, please. Okay, I actually am the chair of the Education Committee, and we have 3 focus areas that we look at as part of our committee. College prep, we work a lot with the Iowa College Access Network. We do work with St. Ambrose on different workshops, summaries with the University of Iowa, grant writing, essay writing, scholarship applications, and so on, and financial literacy. Also, we do work with the Iowa College Access Network on FAFSA applications. Other areas are the National Scholarship Program. This is our flagship program. We award scholarships every year. This year we awarded, it was 39 scholarships with approximately $31,000. So we're pretty proud of that. The national matches is for our local dollars, and it's a good program. It's a very good return on our investment. And then the third area that we work with is with the Davenport School District. We do several things there. We kind of adopt some of the Title I schools, especially where there's a large minority or Latino population. We do some donating, not only volunteering work, but like Fillmore, we donated books, school supplies, things like that. Funding. At Jefferson School, we work with Stepping Stones. Monroe Skybucks program, we do a donation annually for those programs. And we just started one with Jackson with their clothes closet. So very happy to do that kind of work with us. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just some things that our education committee, our initiatives work on. We have a computer bank at the Project Renewal. It's a tech center there. We have computers located upstairs, and we work a lot with Ann. It's a very good program, after-school reading program. Something that we've started in the last couple of years, we're working with the Tri-City Building Trades. We're doing different types of apprenticeship workshops, job fairs and stuff like things like that. This Wednesday we're doing, or tomorrow I guess, we're doing one at the Lulac Center. We have about 12 skilled trade unions coming down, and we're hoping for a large turnout for that. We're also working with the University of Iowa Labor Center. They are putting on 4-week pre-apprenticeship training programs, and we start that Saturday. We'll be down at the Lulac for an 8-hour session, and that will be for 4 weeks. We work a lot with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, mentoring. We have volunteers down there. We do some fundraising and things like that, and help Big Brothers. Again, we talked about the Title I support programs. I got a little video, some pictures of that. And then different type of state and school initiatives that we work on. Okay, this is just a picture when we made some donations earlier this year or last year, I'm sorry. Fillmore, Project Renewal, Quad City Valley Folklorico. They're a very good ambassador for us for the Latino community that we support very well. Monroe School, Glenview has and East Moline has quite a program, stay in school program, 1 by 1. And then Jefferson Elementary, Stepping Stones. Okay, right now I introduce Emma Arguello. She's a student at Central High School, and we talk a little bit about what the Youth Council does down at our Lulac organization. Emma?
At the Lulac, we have different leadership development focuses like group mentoring, educational field trips, and community service. For group mentoring, we have guest speakers such as Lupe Hernandez, who is our scholarship chairperson. She helps us prepare for college, and she helps with the FAFSA and financial aid. For the educational field trips, we recently, last month, went to University of Iowa and got a tour of the campus, and we even got to eat in their cafeteria. At the Nahant Marsh Education Center, we've been there often during the summer times to walk around. and recently we adopted a snake there. At the Figge Art Museum, we annually participate at the Day of the Dead to prepare the mural. During community service, we have city cleanups like cleaning the streets, like Rockingham Road. And at the Rock Island Arsenal National Cemetery, we set wreaths around the cemetery for them.
I'm Chris Garcia. I'm currently a member of the Lulac Youth Council. I go to Davenport Central High School, just a little ways down there. Some more activities we do for Lulac is educational activities like Emma was talking about, such as Putnam Museum visits, where we take a tour of certain exhibits that they have, usually with a guide for educational purposes. Something else that falls under the educational category would be our joint activity with River Action Mississippi, where we take a tour of the Mississippi River on a boat, where we learn about the environment of the river and certain ways that it works, certain ways that it can be cleaned up, and bad ways it's been polluted. Recently, like Emma said, we took a tour of the University of Iowa. We took a campus visit where we learned about the university, we learned about the classes, what courses they offer. We saw the dorms and just everything about the campus. We even got to meet the Iowa basketball coach who was eating lunch at the same time with us, which was a very cool experience. We are also thinking of planning to take a tour of Iowa State University. We are trying to set that up. We also are having a co-sponsor event of the Latino Youth Summit on November 3rd. So that's coming up in a month or so. We also offer YMCA memberships to youth members of the group. We think that being active and being very involved and just staying healthy is a very important thing. So that's something we provide to members of the youth group. And lastly, we often attend River Bandits games. Most recently, we went to one on Father's Day.
Okay, this is just a picture of the youth group up at the University of Iowa. And like I said, the big take of that day was having lunch with Mr. McCaffrey, the coach. That was pretty cool. So, you got any questions?
Director Snyder.
All right, we got to back up and talk about this adopted snake. One, does this snake know it's adopted? And two, what kind of process do you have with it? You don't have to like take it home and.
I don't really know much about it, but I know we don't have to take it home. But it's inside the Nahant Marsh, there's like a building, and you walk in, there's like snakes and turtles, but like they're in their own exhibit, but it's like inside the building.
So it's not like a gerbil like in elementary school that you take turns taking it home or
They
anything.
adopted a snake.
Yeah.
So that's because that was about the only thing left.
All right. Well, you skipped right past that quick, and I had all kinds of things running through my head. So, thank you.
Director Beck.
I just want to say I appreciate you all coming down here, and to the students who talked with us. I think it's so important that you're involved in the community already, and keep up the good work. It looks like you guys are doing some awesome stuff, and I think that's really important and fantastic, and we'll support you if we can.
Director Potts.
So in an average year, as an estimate, how many students do you touch? Or do you engage? Do you involve?
In our organization, we usually maintain somewhere between 15 to 25 students. But in addition to the students in Davenport, we also have youth councils in Muscatine, and we also have them in Ottumwa, Iowa. So that's kind of a network. There's probably about 50 to 60 kids altogether that are communicating back and forth and doing different projects.
again, thank you very much for coming and putting this presentation on for us. Obviously, they're doing very well. You two are very well spoken. You did a great job. Hopefully, this is the highlight of your night tonight, being here with us. So, again, thank you very much. Keep up the great work and keep doing all the things you can for students. And I'll turn it back to the superintendent.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you guys for coming and speaking so eloquently. Much appreciated. We're very proud of the work that you do. I think there's two other things to highlight from our meetings that we have. Mr. Reyes has partnered with and his team have partnered with the University of Iowa. And we most recently brought Dr. Stevenson in to look at how we can infuse our own local history into the lessons that we have. And they're very diligent at that. And we're beginning to move forward and make some headway. And I'm very excited about learning about our own local history and accomplishing some standards work inside of our classrooms. I think that's amazing work. I think the other thing that is very important, a data point inside of Davenport Community School, students that fill out the FAFSA, their likelihood of gaining a certificate, whether it be a college degree or welding, whatever it would be, goes through the roof. And they've made it their mission to have as many students fill out the FAFSA as possible. And so they look at data. They put programs in place to eliminate barriers, and we're very proud of the work that all of you are doing in our community. And Mr. Reyes, you've been doing this for a long time, and we really appreciate the hard work and the effort and the, I will say, perseverance and persistence that you display for our community. It means a lot to us, and we look forward to continuing our partnership with you. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Very much.
That wasn't for you.
No, I know it wasn't for me. We don't have any fire stuff. That's great. Love it. For me. Of course it wasn't for me.
All right. Board reports. Are there any board reports?
Can we hold a picture too?
Oh,
Can we do a picture
yes.
with them up
Yeah,
front too?
actually,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you for.
Mr. Reyes.
Mr. Reyes, you're being there.
How about you guys just stay there, we can put the kids up in front.
Yeah. It's a hard no on that one.
TJ's too tall.
Nice seeing you, Mike. Thank you. Nice
Good
job.
job. Now go do your homework. It's day one of school.
I apologize for breezing over the picture. Board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Hayes.
The board would like to express our sincere condolence to the Mary Jane Andrews family. She was a 40-year teacher at Sudlow. Ed Wooten family, he taught at Central and North. And Deborah Heisinger, who suddenly passed away, and she was a teacher at Jefferson. So again, the board would like to express our sincere condolence in the loss of these three employees and previous employees.
Are there any other board reports? I'm going to get on my soapbox. It was the first day of school. And what do I always say? Watch the speed zones and speed limits in our school zones. Again, the kids are walking to school every day. Today was the first day. I've seen a lot of people speeding down 53rd, even with all the road construction and stuff, and that's very sad because someday one of our little kids is going to get hurt by that. So it doesn't take that much longer to get to where you need to go. Make sure you leave earlier and make sure you do 25 in all of our school zones. Superintendent.
To reiterate your point, we had we had an accident today in a school zone. So it is so important as we're establishing these routines. So I can't echo that enough. You'll be seeing some social media come from President Goza and myself as we make appearances on a very serious topic, because it is important for us, particularly in construction zones. It just makes things so much harder.
Thank you for that. Brenda, do you want to step up to the podium and talk about board elections?
Looks like we're on. School board elections will be held in conjunction with the city elections on Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. As of right now, the terms of 3 of our school board members expire this year. Great materials available, Iowa Secretary of State and Iowa Association of School Board websites. You're also welcome to pick up a packet from me if you're interested in running for the board. You may turn in your materials to me starting today, and from now until September 16th, I will accept your nomination records.
By 5 p.m. on September 16th, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Brenda. Any other board reports? Seeing none, I will move on to communications. Open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The open forum request form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or online for those who want to participate in open forum virtually. The link is located on the school board page of the district's website. For those who want to participate virtually, the request must be emailed to Brenda T. at tbren@davenportschools.org by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. And you can find her email on the website. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issues that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. Anyone not in attendance but wishing to speak at open forum that has already filled out the virtual open forum request can call 563-445-5001 and enter the conference ID. Is there any open forums? Do we have any turned in virtually? Thank you. Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Beck. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes. Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. May I have a motion on the approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder?
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation for the adoption of bills from the bill listing period of 8/4/21 to 8/17/21 Whereas resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the treasurer, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of 8/4/21 to 8/17/21.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Director Poston?
Just some clarification, and I want to thank Brenda for answering some of my questions already. But just to follow up on there was quite a few listed as far as reimbursement for parent transportation, and the explanation that Brenda gave me was that these are non-public parents that request that have busing available, but request or transport the kids on their own. So how does that differ? What about for parents in the public school system? Is that different?
Kevin, you want to take that one?
It's different in the fact that the state funds items such as textbook adoption. Transportation is another one of those that they fund. So our responsibility is to get the kids to school for our kids. Parochial school kids have an option of to be paid assistance to take their own kids or not. That's a little bit of a nuance in that. If we ever had a situation where one of our kids needed to, we could not get them, we would have to pay for them to get to school.
Okay, so a parent of a public school child cannot apply for these funds?
Correct.
Any other discussion? Director Beck?
I guess I'm still kind of confused. So if I send my kid to parochial school and I drive them, I can apply for reimbursement?
If they're eligible for transportation.
So does that mean they have to live a certain distance from the
Yes.
school?
Same rules as what our district does for transportation.
Okay. Is that person paying into this in the first place? Or are they getting, I mean, I guess they're paying private school tuition, right?
Right.
I mean, are we talking hundreds of dollars per person, or are we talking like $5 a person? I mean, it doesn't cost that much in gas to take a kid to school.
No, I can't remember how much it is per pupil per semester. But this reimbursement is 100% reimbursed by the state of Iowa.
Okay, so it's not our money.
It's not our money.
It's just flowing through.
Correct.
Okay, well, that makes it better. Not great, but better. Thank you.
If it was our students that we're paying, they're not going to reimburse us 100% to have our students be taken by their parents.
Yeah.
Director Potts?
Is it my understanding that parochial school students can choose whatever parochial school they wish to attend, regardless of where they live?
Correct.
And we would have to transport them to that school, regardless of where they live, regardless of how our routes are?
Within our district.
Within our district. So is it possible that it might be cheaper than trying to get a bus route to transport these kids all over town to different parochial schools to pay the person directly to bring their own kid to school?
That's one of the reasons that we are able to, that they do get a reimbursement, because it doesn't fit our routes and it's not the neighborhood school particularly.
Thank you. I was just trying to clarify.
Director Klein-Jerome?
If there's a bus available to a parochial school that would be on a student's route, but the parents choose to drive them, do they still get that reimbursement?
Yes.
Again, for clarification, I guess now, it's not actually our money. we funnel it for the state. I feel like the private schools should handle their own stuff and not funnel it through us, because that just looks weird.
It's been like that for
Right, but I mean,
decades. But
yeah, but
yeah.
it looks different because it comes out of all of our stuff.
Correct. And even if when we do transport parochial schools, we do get a little bit of when we transport parochial school students, the state does reimburse us a small amount as well on top of that. So when we transport, we do get reimbursed for our costs, not dollar for dollar, but there's a set amount that they reimburse schools. So this is just for students who are transported by their parents, and it's how we have to report it on our annual report. There's a transportation annual report, and that's how we get reimbursed.
Okay. Director Pashut.
Just a correction, even though this money's passed through, it is still our money. If you're paying taxes, it's your money.
You're correct. It's our money via the state of Iowa, not our money via property tax or via tuition or our allowable growth, our funds, our general funds. It's on top of. But yes, you're right. It is still our money, but via the state.
Thank you for that clarification, Director Pashut. That was kind of what I was meaning. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. We already did the superintendent report. We'll go on to committee reports.
We had another very strong board finance committee meeting. I believe we have Gary Sinclair with us tonight, or are we moving this down to the second part? Kevin?
The second part.
So our finance committee meeting, we discussed the upcoming negotiations that are and the exact flow of information, the exact flow of information and steps that are necessary. We discussed establishing an insurance committee, which is well on its way. Jamie and Kevin are working towards that. We discussed our certified annual report and the process that's coming for that. But the main heavy lift that we did in there were the salary comparisons, which are a discussion point for later on. We also talked about our long-range facility planning that's coming up with us and to be voted on here tonight, and the process that's coming for that. So we had some great discussions that are setting the stage for a pretty successful year this year. We reviewed some revenue statements and things of that nature. So Kent and Karen, do you have anything to add about our finance committee meeting? Again, the bulk of our report will come down in our discussion later. Kevin, do you have anything you'd like to add from our finance committee?
Yeah, one of the things you're used to seeing about this time is a monthly report where you see the critical statistics. This is an exception to the year because we're still ending our fiscal year. As TJ mentioned, we're doing our certified annual report. It's due September 15th, so we're doing a lot of booking transactions in the correct year. When we make those adjustments, it affects July. So to give you a report for July, the numbers are going to change up until we get the report finalized. So that's why you're not seeing one now. What you'll see at the last board meeting in September, you'll see a July and August report together. So that will get us caught up for our monthly reports.
Thank you. That concludes it.
All right. Policy Committee, Director Beck, do you have anything to report on?
Not right now. We haven't met in a bit.
Director Poston.
Has the policy committee had a chance to look at one of the policies I proposed as far as the school district selling assets to the highest bidder?
So we've been working our way through systematically, and we haven't gotten to the business ones yet, but we'll be on that. Yeah.
Elziak, do you have a report on that? Nothing at this time. Poverty Committee, Director Hayes, do you have anything on that?
No, we do not have anything. I guess one thing that I would like to mention with the Poverty Committee is although we're not having any meetings that since COVID we have addressed poverty in several different ways with the free lunches. Everyone has the free lunch. There's other programs that have been meeting the needs, but we haven't had an official meeting.
Board members, when you talk, could you just either pull your mask down a little bit or whatever, because it's kind of hard to hear you. If you're comfortable with that, just so that way everybody can hear. As far as legislative advocacy, we are working on getting something set up with our state legislators in December.
We have a save the date.
Yeah.
Sent to them.
And we're just waiting on reply backs on who's available. And then the superintendent and myself are working on getting around to all of our local municipalities that we feed into, whether it be city council meetings, county board of supervisor meetings, and all that, to try to just get out there and say who we are and work on building some rapport with those other local entities. You have anything else to add to that?
That's good.
Okay. All right. I don't think I missed any committees. All right, we'll move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 11.01?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve policy 502.03 on student expression and student publications.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.02?
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I move that the board approve the level 1 and 2 investigators as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Potts. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.03?
Mr. President,
Director Poston?
recommend the board approve the revised 2021 board meeting calendar to reflect the annual and organizational meeting will be held November 22nd, 2021 instead of November 8th as previously approved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Director Klein Jerome?
So if we want to, since this one does cover July, if we want to amend that, are we just waiting till November or?
No, we set the next, so this is for this year, and then next year's we'll set next year in November. When we do the, which one's first? Is it the organizational meeting and then the annual? No, it's the annual meeting and then organizational, right?
Yeah.
We'll do it at the organizational meeting.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Beck, did you have something?
I was just going to say for clarification, this has to do with the moving of the school board elections from September to November. And then when the canvassing of votes is done, an organizational meeting involves choosing the president and vice president for the next year, whereas the annual meeting is where we're sort of reconciling, officially and formally reconciling our books and things like that. And so that can still be done in September, but we can't have our
No,
organizational
We do them
meeting.
both at the same time. One.
We don't have to, though.
Right, but we do.
We do, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying the reason that this has changed is we could do them separately if we wanted to.
I just think when we set the calendar last year, we didn't realize how long it was going to take.
Right, right.
Because we had to wait for the canvass of votes from Muscatine County, which takes a little bit longer than Scott
Yeah.
County. So,
Yeah. So, and then by the time we have all that in, it's yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.04?
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation to approve Dr. Naomi C. Shelley to serve as medical director for the 2021-2022 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.05?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes?
I move the board approve the plans and specifications for the masonry improvement at Adams project as shown in the 95% plan and specifications.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Director Potts. Is there any discussion? Director Klein-Jerome?
Josh, how long will students not be able to use the gym while this is going on? Because I know it's indoor and outdoor.
We're hoping to have it completed while the weather's still nice, so that it,
Okay.
like in a month or so, month and
Okay.
a half, so that if kids can be outside, we can have them outside playing, doing things like that. And then when the weather starts turning worse, we can get them back in the building if need be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Director Hayes? I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.06?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes?
I move the board approve the plans and specifications for the McKinley restroom repair project as shown in the 95% plan and specifications.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Beck. Is there any discussion? Director Poston?
I was going to ask on the last one, but when will the bids go out for these?
I believe, boy, offhand, I don't know the date exactly. It's on my timeline. September.
Director Klein-Jerome, do you have a question as well?
I probably should wait till the bids come in, but on this one, are we going to try to recoup money from the individuals that were involved in causing this damage?
I'm working on that one.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.07?
President,
Director Snyder.
I move that the board approve the plans and specifications for the Williams restroom on lower level project as shown in the 95% plans and specifications.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein-Jerome. Is there any discussion? Director Poston.
Is the need for this because of the Reconnect program? Is that why we're needing the bathrooms?
This need has been there for a long time. So whatever program that we have down there in that lower facility, there's no real proper restroom down there on that floor. So we've always needed this program there. Josh, do you have anything to add on that?
There's one restroom in that space. There's over 40 people, adults and children.
We've had this on the list of things to do for a while. Good question. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Snyder. Or I'm going to call for the vote. Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.08?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the plans and specifications. Oh, I'm sorry. I move the board approve the plans and specification for the West Kimberley Complex roof replacement project as shown in the 95% plans and specifications.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Potts. Is there any discussion? Director Poston.
Is this covered by our insurance or not?
Yes. This
Okay.
is from hail damage.
Yeah. What's our deductible on something like that?
It normally was 100% or $100,000, not 100%. But because of other issues we've had throughout the year with that same storm, one event, I believe this one will be 100% covered.
Director Beck, you had a question?
Oh, that actually basically answers it because it was my understanding that in the future we're planning on moving facilities out of this building potentially, but if it needs to be repaired right now and we're not paying for it, then fine.
Sure.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Does this just involve what used to be called the Kimberley Center, or is it also the Operations Center out there as well?
No, actually, it's the sports complex area. The West Kimberley project is the sports complex.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. So where West plays baseball out there. Gotcha. Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.09?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the selection of Bray Architects to provide consulting support for the long-range facilities plan project with the attached fee proposal totaling $239,000 plus any direct owner pre-approved expenses listed on the proposal.
See what they say.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein-Jerome. Is there any discussion? Director Poston.
When these interviews were taking place, and was there a bid attached with each of the applicants?
Yes, there was. And if you wouldn't mind, Josh, would you please go over the interview process that we utilized for the selection in this process?
So we went out for bid with 10 different firms. All 10 responded, which was awesome. We had a very good group to choose from. The original 10 were gone through the proposals. Were in a packet. The fees were to be kept separate. We wanted to base our decision on hiring the best candidate, not necessarily having the fee or the amount of dollars weigh on our decision. So we went through all the packets, all 10 of them, with a group of 6 of us. We had a rubric. I provided you guys a sheet of what the the basically scoring summary was of those 10 firms we interviewed, or we looked at their proposals. Of those 10, we selected 4. So OPN, BLDD, Bray, and Leggett. 4 of us interviewed those 4 firms. We kind of put together some scores on how we thought they did. We narrowed it down to 3 firms. We did another round of interviews with 3 people in that round of interviews. When we completed those interviews, Mr. Gosa was involved as well with us there. So it's TJ, myself, and Dan Gosa at the last interview. We opened the fee schedule at that point to review. So we tried to base our selection primarily on how they interviewed and what we thought of the firm and the way they present and the way they gather information, the way we thought they would work with us. And then we looked at fees afterwards. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I'm always under the feeling that, you know, we need to look at lowest bidder. I understand you want to get, you know, the best possible candidate, but I guess my question would be, you know, how did this bid compare with the other top candidates?
So within of the 3 that we opened, it was within $20,000 of one of them, and it was under the other one by around $120,000. So in the middle, per se, but not much higher than the lowest. Does that make sense?
And just one other question. On the first round of interviews, why was there not a school board member involved with that?
I don't know that
I had the wrong date in my calendar, so when I missed out on the first round, it wouldn't have been unfair to the other ones.
I think my suggestion would be on something this important that we have, you know, at least, of course, at least 1, but possibly 2 members of the school board involved with this, because I think this is so important and so critical to our school district. And so that would be my recommendation going forward.
I appreciate the feedback. I mean, I think we did try to do our best job of selecting the best firms and trying to have a way around it, but for sure I can keep that.
No, I appreciate all the work you went to and all the time that was spent on that.
Any other discussion? And being part of that, I do want to, that was one of the main things why we didn't want to look at dollars. We wanted to base it on who was the best person. Sometimes money's not everything. Lowest doesn't always mean the best. Doesn't always mean responsible or responsive. It's, we just wanted to see their plan, how they presented it, what resources they were going to have, because sometimes in the top 3, it was very hard. We spent a long time going over that, and grading wise, they were within a couple points of each other. It was really hard. That was we spent most of the afternoon going over that stuff, and it was nice everyone having their interest, you know, and then they kind of laid out how they've done it, how they would do it, how they would engage the community with it, you know, and that was kind of a huge thing for us, you know, who would lead that. Would it be us? Would it be them? And the majority of them, they were going to lead that charge and work with us on that. So it was it's better than anything I've ever done out of the operations department. I'll say that. So again, I appreciate the rubric you and Jamie put together when we got to grade them all and go through all the books and everything like that. We spent a lot of time doing that, and then to have everybody grade it and then narrow it down from there and do that. So I appreciate all the effort and everything to win it. Superintendent, did you?
Yes, I'd like to add a couple comments. First of all, the firms that participated in this process, I want to thank them very much, because they're firms that we use all the time. They're very reputable firms. And so we want to thank them for spending the time with us. One of the things that I'd like to highlight about this firm is they have an excellent, their demographer was outstanding. And coming from Wisconsin, they've gone through a lot of the open enrollment, charter schools issues, and things like that, and the way that their demographer landscaped the community really seemed to fit exactly the direction that we were going. The process for engaging the community, I believe that's a process that we can establish and utilize in many ways as we move forward. The other piece of this is that they have 80 to 90% of the work that they do is strictly with education, and that was a huge selling point for us. The other piece that they build into their plans and community involvement are the valves, because they know that we are going to change. And one of the big points that they shared with us is that they build in valves. So in case the population does come back there, then we can utilize this. And their language for going through that process was very positive. And so the fit was really there in this instance. So those are a couple of things that I think are critical points. The study of the open enrollment issues that we have, the population changes that we have coming for us, the plans that the city has, and they have a proven track record of working with cities. Actually, one of the CEOs of the company recently purchased a local architectural firm. So one of the local architects, his children graduated from Davenport Central and is very familiar with the area as well. So they have a firm here in town, and one of the owners is sitting back here with us today. So it shows dedication to the process. Thank you.
I'm glad you said the valves. I forgot about that. Director Beck, and then.
So I actually, as a scientist, doing blind research studies or blind experiments is great. It helps eliminate a lot of the bias. If we know exactly who a person is or something like that, whether we intend to or not. Although I guess I would ask, was there you definitely get what you pay for, and you don't want to go for the least expensive necessarily. You want that experience and all of the good qualities that this firm has. Was there sort of a budget amount around which or above which we were not going to go, like a range, a window, that if they didn't fit into this, even if they were the people who invented this whole process, we wouldn't necessarily go with them?
I had a rough idea that it would cost between $150,000 and $250,000 just from asking around, but the climate of dollars right now and COVID and traveling, and I didn't know if that was going to affect that, but it fell pretty close to the range where I was thinking it was going to be, or well within that range, really.
Okay. Well, I mean, to me, it matters if there's a range, there's some ballpark in mind, because I wouldn't want somebody to submit a fantastic plan and we pick that one and it be, 5 times as expensive as the next one down. So I don't, I'm with Director Poston on this, that you can't just completely throw the money out the window in terms of consideration. But I do really appreciate the process that you all went through to choose this firm. I think it's a good way to do it.
One other thing I don't think we mentioned was the Wisconsin's dealt with some diversity or some outgoing student issues where they've allowed students to transfer from school to school. So they do have some experience with that too, that weighed on some of our decisions as well.
Yeah, and I think that's important that they've got experience with a district with districts that have experienced changes like ours. I mean, it's not easy to plan out in the future.
Director Poston, do you have a question?
Josh, just explain to me then, on the statement here, it says plus any direct owner pre-approved expenses listed on the proposal. What exactly is that?
It would be for example, like if we wanted to call in a firm to do like an architectural study for history or something out of the ordinary like that, like we would, trying to think of something else that would fall into that realm. They said they weren't going to charge us for traveling fees. Is it actually listed on the sheet that's provided on the bottom? I'll log in real quick here. It says right on the bottom of it, but you scroll down to the bottom.
Yep.
One more. A little bit further, actually. Right there. Direct owner expenses would be what I'm referring to on that sheet. Traffic impact studies, environmental analysis, things like that. I couldn't go through the list of all of them. I mean, it could really range, I guess, if something comes up, but.
Basically, like in a nutshell, if you go to open something up and there's asbestos, you got to stop back out. That's an added expense.
You just
Or
never know.
when you put a brick facade on Brady Street Stadium and it adds a whole bunch more weight, and then the soil can't handle it, and you have to do some boring things. We've been there, and that happened. Did that answer your question, Director Poston? Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. All right, now we are on to discussion items. I didn't miss any, right? First discussion item is, and Gary's on for this one, right?
Gary, are you still with us?
I am.
Well, look at there. So, again, part of our finance committee and part of the direction that the board has set for us is the evaluation of our salary comparisons. And as we went through our first wave where we were looking at administrators and teachers, the board really wanted to see where do we sit with the rest of the groups. And so we asked Gary Sinclair and Bill Decker and Kevin and Jamie to put together a report that's similar to the one that you were looking at before. And we dug in, got feedback from the finance committee. And so what you're seeing today is a presentation on that. So we've asked Gary Sinclair to do this presentation for us. And so Gary, if you wouldn't mind taking over for us. Brenda, do you need to drive for him, or does he have access to drive?
I've got it.
Okay. So Gary, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for the time. I've been watching your meeting, and I don't miss attending board meetings. And you really had some great presentations and some really distinguished guests. But I did notice that when I was there, nobody wanted their picture taken with me.
Next time you're in town.
Yeah, okay. So Brenda, you want to open the files, or do I have access? Okay.
You better open them.
What we did is to use the exact same format that we used for the other report. Now, there are some reasons to use a different format, but we think this provides the best consistency for what we're doing. So to start with, what we looked at was the operation and maintenance. Now, this data source is from the Iowa Association of School Boards. It would have been the data ending June of 21. So it's fiscal year 21 data, which really is about as good a data as we can get. It is reported on the beds, which is the basic education document survey. So can we make that any big? I can't see it real well. Can you see it? We just need to see one at a time. So a little more. Okay, that's good. It's not Davenport.
We give Gary a hard time in our meetings because his home phone sounds like a pager that a volunteer paramedic would answer. So we are always worried that he's going to run off for a call. So
No, I just had to shut it off. What we did is we actually did two comparisons, and we presented the UEN comparison, the 8 UEN, and during our finance committee, we talked about doing a geographic, and we've done that also. But we'll first look at the operation and maintenance. We focused on providing the enrollment information, the total salary, the retirement benefits, and then the total of those two. And in most cases, we assume that retirement benefits would be the IPERS. So you can see for the operation and maintenance, this is all of these are non-directors. You can see that Davenport rates 7th out of 8. Now, they are really pretty close to the 6th one, not terribly behind the ones before. Now, Sioux City, for whatever reason, one of the variables that we aren't able to bring in is longevity. So we really don't know how long some of those people have been there. That would account for part of it. The biggest variable that I meant to mention that we probably can't take into account is reporting. You know, are they getting the right people in the right place? We think as a whole they do, but sometimes when we have some outliers, it might be because maybe a director ended up in one of these groups rather than the other. Any questions about the format or the results of this position? The next position, we looked at paraprofessionals. Those are associates, and we really broke it down to special ed and then other programs. Other programs would include probably title programs, and then you have some associates that are general education that are not necessarily categorical. You can see that for the special ed, we actually rate 2nd out of 8. We are aware of 2 schools, Des Moines and Davenport. There may be others, but we're aware of 2 schools that pay a stipend for special ed paras. We do plan on continuing that in the future, and that's probably the reason we're so high here. But notice that although there's a gap between us and Des Moines, we're pretty close to 3, 4, and 5. Not a great deal of difference. Now, when you look at the other programs, again, probably Title I, library associate, that type of thing, we actually are 8 out of 8. One of the discussions we had is what would be the impact if we did total compensation. Because Davenport pays the full family, we thought that might make a difference. After I talked to Kevin, I actually did that analysis. I have it myself, but it didn't make a big difference. It didn't change our position a lot. You can see here, we're about $1,800 below the one closest to us, and considerably more than the one that's at 6. So there's a considerable gap between other program associates.
Hey, Gary, just a correction. It's not family. I believe it's single. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. We don't pay associates family,
No.
but we do pay teachers family.
Yes.
Okay. I thought we paid them all the same. Good, thank you. We then moved down to food service, which did not include any directors. And you can see that we rated 6 out of 8. Now, as I looked at this, we really talked about full-time versus part-time. there are a large number of people that, work a few hours a day to some that work full time. You can see that we are pretty close to the 4th and 5th place, and also close to the 7th and 8th place. Really, when you look at 3 through 8, we're all pretty grouped together. Not a large difference between us. If you go on down, please. This is looking at administrative support. Now, honestly, I struggled a little bit when I put this together, because when I say administrative support, I think what I see in my mind and what you might see in your mind is considerably different. So I believe that in this case, particularly in the one the district-wide, we end up with some people that are probably director or coordinator level. Certainly not sure of that, and might want to do more investigation. But if we look at building staff and office support, would have been called secretarial, but they do a lot more than that. You can see that Davenport is the 2nd out of 8 for building level support. The people that actually work at the building level. Pretty significant gap between Des Moines and us. And then there's a pretty big gap between us and Cedar Rapids. So you can see that this is one of the areas that we rate relatively high. On the administrative support district-wide, I don't believe that we're comparing apples to apples here, but we had to report the data as it existed and then decide if we want to look at something else. But to be $20,000 behind Waterloo with the same position sounds suspicious. So I don't know whether we do a survey of the 8 schools or what, but as we pursue trying to fix the things that we think need to be fixed, we may want to look at delving into this one in particular. Now, with this, there are also charts. And the only reason, if you'd open up the chart one, the only reason for the chart, it gives you that quick visual of where you're at and your relative position. So you can see that we're near the bottom on the operational, but it gives you a sense of where we are. We're not terribly below, some above us. So that's something that the charts are good to give you a quick visual of not only where do we rate, but kind of how do we compare to others. If you would open the other that says Geo, I think what we did is we took the 6 districts that actually touch Davenport, and we considered Iowa City because we frequently hear of losing staff there. So you can see that, well, you know geographic better than I. We do end up with a relatively small district with Durant at 531. So if we look at the same positions, operation and maintenance, you can see we're actually at the same position. We were 7th out of 8 on the UEN. We're 7th out of 8 with geographic. The biggest difference is the spread or the gap is not as big. We're closer to more people in the middle and closer to the top. We are below the average. Now, I didn't point that out on the other, but you can see we're at about 47,178, and the average of these is 48,369. When you look at the next group, the paraprofessionals for special education, in our geographic area, we are actually the highest. And again, and there may be others that pay a stipend. I'm just not personally aware of any others. We are about $2,500 above the average in this group. When we look at paraeducators for other programs, we are actually based as far as rank that we were with the other UEN districts. Not a difference in rank. Again, though, a difference in relative position to the middle and relative position to the high. The next category is the food service. We do move up a little bit in rank. We're actually in the middle. You can see that the average is 25.6. We're at 24.2. When you look at our relative position to the people in the middle, we're very close. If we looked at this chart, they would all be very close. It's a very flat chart comparison. Under administrative support, building level, it's interesting, we actually drop in rank, but we're closer to the top two and to the middle. I think on the UEN for building level support, we were second, and for here we are third. But again, relative, the compressing of the schedule is more apparent with all of these positions. District-wide administrative support, we are seventh out of 8. That high one is one also that was recognized. I think Iowa City was second or third. There were 3 of them over 70. And again, some concern about what might be put into this group. And I would probably test the top 3 in the UEN to see who they are. But you can see for these our relative position. And the reason the geographic is important, because if you have an administrative support person that looks for a higher paying job, they're probably not interested in what Sioux City's paying, but they're certainly interested in what Pleasant Valley's paying. If you open the charts to these, I think you will see that it becomes visually very flat. If you go just kind of go down, you can see that the 1 through 7 in the first group are relatively flat, and all of them end up that way. Here we're very close to the middle. Again, the charts are really good to give you a sense of where you are and kind of how do you compare to that entire group. These are presented with the exact same format for the intent of expanding the board's understanding of where we are relatively. What questions do you have?
Director Beck.
Thank you for sharing this with us, Gary. I appreciate it. I guess I have some questions about the paraprofessionals, others, relative to our neighboring districts. It looks like we are, for lack of a better word, underpaying those paraprofessionals. If you look at the table, it looks like we're paying significantly less. Is that something that we can think about? Is that because we have a lot of part-time workers? Is that because we don't have longevity? Do you know, compared to our neighboring districts? Or is that something that we could potentially work on? Okay.
I think that's the purpose of this is to start dialogue, and obviously there are some things that are alarming because we want to set this. We're asking the board to have discussions to kind of help us set the stage for the direction that we want to go as we move into discussing contracts with our bargaining units. So that's a really good point. So that's a question. Okay, is that because of part-time? What causes that? So I think those are excellent questions that we're looking for feedback for as we move forward.
Okay, well, I would say that's an area where we should definitely investigate, because if we can pay our paraprofessionals, comparable to our neighboring districts, I think we're going to be in a lot better position, and we should. They do good work.
We have 17 part-time and 128 full-time. So when we look at hours, it appears that by far and away, our largest number are full-time. When I look at Council Bluffs, they're 60, they have full-time. So, but you're right, though, that's what we need to look at to see what the variance is. And it can be as simple as not paying enough, but it could be other things also that we need to consider.
Thank you.
Are you, Gary, are you done with your presentation part? You wanted to have a discussion on the whole thing, or just the
questions or comments?
Okay. Any questions on it as a whole or comments? So one of my things, I'm the one that put the board request in for this. What I would like to see, obviously we have negotiations that are going to be coming up. Now, we need to get, especially with our surrounding districts, I mean, we're the largest employer. We should be the first out of 8. Now, obviously, that's not going to all happen in a year, but we need to start working with some of these groups and give more, instead of doing 1.5 across the board, because 1.5 to the top and 1.5 to the bottom is way different number. Now, whether it be, and we're going to have to tie this into long-range facilities plan too, right, because we got to right-size our district, and if we're overstaffed, that plays in too, I get that. But maybe next year it's certain groups get 2.5 and some groups get 0.5, so we can start right-sizing the ship and do that, if that's what you're looking for. That was my intent with this, so we could start the conversation, because the union districts are great and everything, but we got to compete with our neighbors. Those are the ones that, and we should be, I mean, we're probably one of the largest educational, providers in the Quad Cities. So that would be my suggestion. And obviously, we're going to have to take that into account when we're doing the long-range facilities plan and stuff like that, right? Where we can do things out of saving Pebble to save general fund dollars. Is there any other discussion, or I'm sure you guys talked about this in Finance Committee too, correct? Director Poston.
I think Karen would agree. We talked about this in depth, and one of my comments was, again, I just don't like throwing money at something. You made the comment that we need to be number one in all these categories. Well, I disagree. We need to be competitive, but we don't necessarily have to be number one in every category. So again, we also need to look at, on some of these that appear to be skewed a little bit, we need to look at, are we comparing apples to apples or not?
Director Potts.
Yeah, my question would be,
turn your microphone on, please.
So a full-time paraeducator in our district is what, 5 hours a day?
Jamie? I believe it's 7 hours a day.
I don't know off the top of my head.
But we don't have very many 7-hour-a-day paras, because if I recall, several years back, we rolled their hours down, or as we were hiring, so we didn't have to provide health insurance. Is that not correct?
No, our full-time pair is 6.5, 7 hours. And then what's the threshold for offering insurance, Jamie?
Can you hear him?
Oh, you can't hear me?
He hears with his eyes.
Oh, sorry, Bruce.
6.5 hours, 7. Those are our typical paras when we're talking about full times. But Jamie, what's the threshold?
I don't know the threshold off the top of my head, but for those that are considered full-time, that we pay full freight for their individual insurance. So we pick up the entire cost. So that's a lot of times when we're looking at the actual salaries up here, there's those additional fringe benefits that are pretty pricey that add on to total compensation.
And is that reflected in this number or not?
No,
It's not reflected in
it's
this
not.
number. And we don't know if other districts do the same or do not do the same.
Right, and then that's also one of the reasons for having the health insurance committee, because when we look at negotiations and total packages, looking at we have a very, I know we've gone through a couple of years of increases, but we do have a generous plan and fairly low rates compared to others in the area. So that's an additional thing when you're looking at really digging into the data. There's more that can be put in there to do a better side-by-side comparison.
Thank you.
I don't know, and we need to find this out, but when we look at the majority of the geographic comparison, they report more part-time than full-time. We report 128 full-time and 17 part-time. So I'm not sure. That's something we need to find out. You know, what are they considering as full or part-time? But by far and away, the majority of ours is being reported as full-time. When you look at the other districts, that's not the case geographically. Muscatine reports 99 part, 43 full. Pleasant Valley reports 27 part, 5 full. So again, what we're reporting appears to be mostly full, whether that's 5 hours. I tried to check ISB's website here quickly, and I'm sure they've got it. I just can't quickly find it to identify what they're using for number of hours for full. And the district may do that. I'm not sure if on the beds, we're given the choice of list how many we consider full, how many we consider part.
I've got some answers if you want me to. I've got somebody listening for me. Full-time paras are generally 6 to 6.5 hours. Benefits apply to anybody over 5 hours. And all of special education paras are at 7 hours.
And we don't report any special ed paras at part-time. 366 full-time.
Yep.
Director Kleindrom, you had a question?
I just have a comment, and I can only really speak for the teachers, not the other groups here, but I'm assuming when you say our insurance is benefit rich, and, you know, I've heard the term the Cadillac of the insurance. For many years, I know teachers took less in salaries to keep that insurance and keep the cost out of their pocket very low or not at all. So to say you've got that, okay, when you look at the salary and say, well, you got to look at them together, but they've also taken less salary to maintain that. So that needs to be considered, because suddenly if you change the insurance plan and it costs them more, but you're not bringing up their salary proportionally that they've given up for many, many years. And I'm assuming it goes to other employee groups as well, but.
I'm able to check some data from what we pulled up, but the average experience for Davenport for non-special ed is the lowest in the geographic area by about half. We're at actually 4.8 average years, and the next closest at 7.6. Actually, Iowa City does have 6, so they're a little closer. But we're still the lowest.
And Gary, you talk about some of these other paraprofessionals, that area. If you're saying Title I, when we budget for Title I full-time paraeducators, it's still less than the salary in retirement. So whatever they're receiving in their health benefit, it's still less than that. So I think the point that you have made is that's an area to be more competitive in.
Director Snyder, you had a question?
Well, not really a question, just a comment. A lot of this data looks very similar as far as what it did several years ago. And when I first saw this data, the first thing I thought of was Director Bill Sherwood years back, who was constantly fighting for 3 groups: our secretaries, our paras, and our food service, who were constantly, our full-timers that weren't earning a quote-unquote living wage. And, as Director or President Gosa said, when we give 1.5% across the board, 1.5% to somebody earning $120,000 looks far different than somebody earning $18,000 a year. And all that's doing is separating that divide even more. So I'm glad to see this data, and I hope we do take it forward. And right now, the entire job market is ridiculously competitive. We are looking at paying some of these people no more than what they could make working a few hours a day doing fast food with no commitment, nothing else. And if we want to keep these good people, these quality people, because they're very important to our kids' education, to their lives in general, we need to step up to the plate, and we need to pay these positions what they deserve to be paid. And this has been a very, very long time coming, and we have the data. We need to do something with it. I'm not saying we need to do something overnight, but we need at least put a plan together to get us to where we should be.
Did anyone else have anything else? Director Beck.
I'm just going to echo what Director Snyder said. Personally, I don't think anyone should be working for our district as a full-time employee and not be able to make a living wage. I think to the best of our ability, we should make sure that that is possible. But it's not going to happen overnight, but it is something that we should work towards.
I think I have our direction.
Do you need any more feedback?
No, let me reiterate what I've heard, and I've heard it echoed several times. We need to utilize the data that we have in front of us, make sure it's scrubbed, utilize the data that we have in front of us, continue to use the transparent, sorry, Mr. Potts, continue to use the transparent process that we had last year. Also evaluate the levels of salaries. So if we need to apply a 2% here, but a 0.75, whatever it may be, we need to make sure we are keeping that in mind, and also keep in mind the salary ranges of administrators versus a paraeducator. So I also, so that's the information that I've heard from the board. Is there anything else that I missed from those data comparisons? And also, it's not going to happen overnight. And as long as we keep this data in the forefront of our school board and our community, then it'll stay alive. Those are my key takeaways, and can kind of help us start to build some of our key assumptions as we move forward.
Have that insurance committee look at getting our own clinic set up.
Oh, here we go.
Save a bunch of costs there. Is there any other discussion? I imagine this was a pretty long finance committee meeting if you guys went over all this.
It was great discussion. It was very good discussion. I will say that.
And then going forward, I imagine you guys are going to discuss this at the finance committee and get whatever game plan, so we'll have something in place when contract negotiations and stuff start.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Any other discussion? Are we done with Gary?
Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you, Gary. We greatly appreciate it. I think we're done with you. Next time you're in person, we'll make sure we get a big picture with you on the board.
Okay.
Thank you,
Have a
Gary.
good meeting. Bye.
All right. Next item for discussion is compensatory education update.
Well, with us tonight, we have Susan Downs, and I think Susan Downs gets the Perseverance Award for tonight. So, Susan, thank you so much for coming tonight to share our compensatory education update. Susan has been the charts and the data that you see in front of you is the way that we've been calculating this from the very onset of the comp ed issues that we've had in our district. And so we've worked collaboratively with the AEA to build this dashboard. So Susan, thank you so much for waiting so long to share this data with us. Go ahead, please.
You bet. You bet. All right. So the last time you had an update was in July of 20. And so I'm going to start there. And I'm going to start with our update for compensatory ed from our original citations. So if you'll remember, in 2017-18, we had our original visit from the state of Iowa, and that was the year that we had the 2,866 citations. And then you'll remember then during the 2018-19 school years when we held all of those IEP meetings and determined that there were 300, can you make it a little bigger? I could probably look at mine. I brought my thing too, so. 315, right, total students that, yeah, thanks. 315 total students that were eligible or required compensatory education. And I think you'll remember that some of those students actually, the IEP teams determined that they were owed a significant number of hours, right? We are down to, last year, there were still 11 students receiving compensatory ed. There was one student that we had yet to schedule. We were, that student, we were still trying to find. And we had closed out, yeah, I can't see that. I'm going to go ahead and look at this. And we had already closed out 303. And when we say closed out, that means we had either provided their services and they were done, they had declined those services, or we had tried to reach them numerous times and we just could not. They would not return our calls. So we finally sent a letter and said, we're going to close out this, but if your case, but if you would like to receive services, please reach out to us and we will open the case and provide the services. And that's what we considered closed out. And then you can see that we had closed out 6,348 hours, and we still had 180 hours to provide, and then 10 hours for the student that we had yet to find. If we go to the next slide, whoops, oh, wrong one. So as of August 5th, we have no students that we have to schedule. We have found them all. We are currently providing services to one student. That student has 48 hours left for us to provide. Hopefully, that student's a high school student, and I'm hoping that, let's hope that we can provide those this year, provided that the student shows up to the sessions. We have closed out the remainder of the students, 314, which is the remainder of those hours. So we are in what we would find to be good shape for those original citations. We're feeling very good about that. Any questions on those? Good. So then during the 2018-19 school year, the state determined that they were going to come in for what they called that phase 2 visit, which are all of those accreditation citations that we're currently working on. And they found some additional citations, both that were kind of a continuation of that original visit, right? And those were for our students on alternate assessment. They determined that we had a number of students that were in our self-contained programs that were on alternate assessment that perhaps didn't belong there. And so we needed to reevaluate all of those students. And they also looked at our students that were in our early childhood programs that perhaps had been in too restrictive of programs, and they requested that we reevaluate those students to determine if we had put them in too restrictive of programs, and then also to determine if we needed to provide them compensatory ed. So we did that. From those evaluations, we found for the students that were in receiving alternate assessment that there were 42 students that we owed compensatory ed. And as of a year ago, in July 20, we were providing compensatory ed for, sorry guys, but I have to look on here because I can't see it up. 30. I know it, I can't see it up there. 30 of those. And we had already closed out 13, and then you can see the hours that we were providing. And then as of August 5th of this year, we had closed out 37. We have 6 students that we are continuing to provide services on. We have 743 hours for those 6 students. And I want to say that 2 of those students have some pretty significant hours that we owe them that will probably take us the next 2 to 3 years to provide. So we'll be providing those services on them. But we're making good movement. And then if you look at the preschool or the early childhood, as of we determined 19 students were owed compensatory ed due to too restrictive of placements. Last year, 16 were receiving their services. 3 had been closed out, and then you can see how many hours we were still working on. As of August 5th of this year, we've closed out 15 of those cases. 4 students are currently receiving services or need to for a total of 279 hours. So clearly, of those 4, at least a couple of them are owed pretty extensive hours. And I am going to say I went in and looked at the attendance, and for 2 of those students, their families have asked that we put that on hold due to COVID. They just want to wait a little bit longer, and we're going to honor that. So that's where we stand with those citations. So something we haven't, anything on that you want to ask before I go on to the next slide?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 that are on hold, so they could be on hold for like a whole nother year or something. So is this Department of Ed okay with that? Or do we have to figure out a way to push through that and get that done?
So far, they haven't said that we needed to push through, and we keep in contact, and I've talked with Kim Hoffman about that. Right now, because of COVID and because of all of the issues, we haven't pushed through on anything. The students are currently kindergartners because they were fairly young, or they might be moving into first grade this year. I'll take a look at that. We will reach out again now that the school year is starting to see how the families feel, hoping that both students actually will attend the same elementary, so hoping that we can move forward. And then I'll work with Kim on that. But during COVID, we felt like we needed to honor their request to hold off.
Okay. The only other thing I gotta say, you guys are all rock stars. This is very impressive numbers. It's terrible we were in the situation we were in, and those kids were owed that stuff, but they were owed it, and I'm glad that the team has been able to right that wrong.
Yes, they've worked very hard. All of our teachers and all of our teams have, and that's AEA and our school teams working together. I will say also, it feels like a lifetime ago, but 18-19 is the year that we worked through these IEP meetings and started to provide our comp ed. And again, it's the spring of 19-20 is the year we started to do these particular citations, and it's the spring of 20 that we shut down, and then it's all last year that we have been dealing with COVID. So it's just been kind of one of those things. So everybody's been working very hard, though. So the next slide is one that we have not shared in the past. Kim and I talked through this, Kim Hoffman and I talked through this and felt like it was important that we do address it. So these are students that we have, or cases where we're now providing compensatory ed, not related to accreditation. So the spring, the very end of the 2018-19 school years, 18-19 school year, as we started to do fidelity checks. So remember, we started talking about how are we going to sustain this compliance. We talked about the fidelity checks that we created, and our special education facilitators and our AEA teams in the building working together to start reviewing IEPs, to look at making sure that our teachers, providing supports to our teachers to make sure that we were keeping the corrections in place. Well, as we've been doing that, there have been occasions where we have found that continued noncompliance. And as a result, we have brought the IEP teams back together to address those issues over the last 3 years. And on occasion have found that we owe compensatory ed because of continued mistakes. And so these are those cases. And just wanted to put that out there that we hope that this will stop happening. I mean, we do, but we are doing our due diligence to make sure that we continue to keep an eye on it and continue to make sure that we're improving. And I will say this, that it's 59 students. There are a couple of students that are owed extensive hours that fall under this for some unusual cases. The others are just a smattering of hours for each of the students. And I can explain the different kinds of situations that have occurred, but you can kind of see there were 59 students. We're currently at 6 students that we are providing services to. We've closed out the other 53. The 6 that we have are the ones that we owe some pretty extensive hours to. And we just wanted to make sure you saw that we are keeping an eye on it, but that we still have some situations that keep happening.
Are you ready for everyone's questions now? Director Beck.
First of all, thank you for the update. Second of all, thank you for this last slide, because that, I think I asked you like 4 or 5 times over the course of 2 years, how are we going to sustain this? How are we going to sustain this? And we don't want to see that we need to give kids compensatory ed, but by finding this, it shows that we're doing those fidelity checks and making sure that we are not letting kids fall through the cracks, and we're not just doing this one time. So I hope that we see this get smaller and smaller and go away. Nobody's perfect. And so as long as we keep doing what we're doing. So my other question then would be, those couple of kids, 6 or so, that had pretty significant issues, was that related to the staff they were working with? And what have we done?
So we have dealt with that. I don't know, TJ, you want to step in here?
Yeah, I don't want to put you in a position
and
of...
I think what you're alluding to is exactly the reason why our students are having compensatory education, and we can't discuss that here.
Okay.
But we definitely have stepped in.
But we're
in those
watching it.
situations.
Okay.
We're keeping track of it. We have facilitators in every single one. We have facilitators in our buildings that are really reviewing caseloads, and really it's to strengthen the programming that we have inside of our buildings to make it more individualized. Our administrators are doing a fantastic job leading those meetings with the AEA individuals, and when we see errors that occur, we are I would say taking care of them swiftly.
Yes.
I guess what I don't want to hear is in 2 or 3 years that the same staff members are not doing what they need to do. So everybody makes mistakes, everybody gets a chance, but these are real children we're talking about, and we can't take risks with them. So, yeah.
Director Kleindrum.
The one group that you said we owed lots of hours and it's going to take multiple years. Are these high school kids, junior high kids, elementary kids where we've got they're going to be around? I mean, if they're high school, it's like, how are we going to get all this in?
So, good question. So, from the original citations, a couple of the students that we owed some extensive time were high school students, and we provided during that first year. And then, honestly, they told us they weren't interested anymore, and so they actually declined when they turned 18. For some of the other ones from the later citations, and even from here, they're younger students, and I expect that we will be providing the services. And again, when we think about it, it's maybe 2 half-hour sessions each week that'll occur over the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
That's kind of how it looks in their IEP, how the team came up with the solution.
Any other questions? Again, I'll say I'm very impressed. I do like that there's accountability structure built into this as well. That is nice. I appreciate you guys dancing around the staffing thing so we don't have an HR issue. And then I have to talk to Wendy, so I appreciate that. But otherwise, I appreciate this and all the hard work that the entire team has done and the partnership with the AEA to get this stuff done. Again, it was a bad spot we were in. I'm glad we were able to rise above that and get these kids the education that they were owed. So thank you again. Any other questions or comments?
The only other thing I would like to add is from doing the fidelity checks, what we are seeing is much improvement. Much improvement.
Thank you, Susan, for your detail into this. Thank you very much. That concludes that.
Thank you. Board requests. Are there any board requests? Seeing none. Administrative reports.
Not this time.
All right. Everybody's favorite point of the meeting. Director Potts, I'll start with you first. Your takeaways from tonight's meeting.
There was a lot in the meeting, a lot of high points. But as I sifted through, I thought that the thing that was the most I found the most important, or at least most impressive, or having the most significant long-term impact was the long-range facility plan architect hiring. To me, that is a monumental event that I don't believe we've ever done before. And I think it has the potential. It has, obviously, that's why it's called the long range. It's going to impact buildings, our education delivery system, our athletic programs, our health and safety programs, our the whole gamut. And we should never underestimate the value of facilities.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Snyder.
Yeah, I echo Director Potts in the long-range facility plan, but also the data that we got on our different employee groups, so that we have that foundation for discussion that we so we can get going to right that ship as well.
Thank you, Director Snyder. Director Hayes.
I enjoyed the entire meeting, but one thing I did like was the sensitivity approach towards the handle with care. I think that's amazing, and that may help with a lot of our discipline issues, because you never know what a person is dealing with, and at least by being made aware of it, I think a lot of our students will have a better chance with individuals understanding what's going on with them.
Thank you. Director Beck.
I think for me, the highlight kind of covers several different things. It was great to see our some of our kids who did really well in baseball and the students who were involved in Lulac. But what I really liked was we're finally seeing the accountability that we've been talking about for so long. We're getting data that we said we needed on the SRO program. We're gathering the data that we said we needed on special education, compensatory ed. We are finally seeing the ability to hold people accountable and hold ourselves accountable for the things that we're trying to change. And that, I think, is really, really important. So, data.
Thank you. Director Poston?
Again, like most of you, the long-range planning facilities, I think is going to be huge, but I also like the data that we receive on our SROs.
Thank you. Director Klein-Jerome?
I appreciated the salary comparisons and the discussion we had. I do think we need to start thinking outside the box, that not everybody should be at the same point. As your example, 1.5%. I appreciate the fact that the students came to us for recognition, which I would like to see us go back to something that was done before I was on board, where schools come and showcase their students in areas. That is very valuable for us as a board and for the public to see what's going on. And I really appreciate the fact that we are making progress in our special ed citations and the fidelity checks, so that we are not allowing it to slip back into an old pattern that we do not want to ever repeat. So I appreciate that.
Mr. Superintendent?
100% echo everything that Bruce said.
What if I wanted to do that? I liked everything about the whole meeting. The ball players from Southeast getting recognition. I believe there was 9 kids spread out through their teams that actually went to Davenport schools. So that's always a good thing, as well as the discussion we've had here. And I do appreciate all the data we're getting and stuff like that. The long-range facilities plan, the presentations that we had with Lulac, the SRO data, that's great. Partnership, hopefully we build some community trust with putting all that stuff out there. And it's great to work with our partners from the city of Davenport on that stuff. The compensatory ed with, acknowledging where we messed up as a district, what we did to correct it, and that we do have a game plan in place to make sure it stays corrected, is all a lot of great things. I think we've had a lot of very productive meetings from where we were to where we are now, and everybody's very involved with everything. I do appreciate all the board members putting in their extra time for committees and things like that. I'm sure you guys' finance committees run a couple hours long. I know a lot of the ones that we have run a lot. It's not just what we do at this table, it's what we do in our spare time as well too. So I do greatly appreciate that. I appreciate all your significant others allowing you to come and do all this stuff. Every now and again I have to thank my wife publicly for that, so get brownie points on that.
Couch gets uncomfortable.
That's right. Bless her heart for putting up with me being gone all the time. But again, I do appreciate all the extra work and effort that everyone puts in on this stuff. It doesn't always wind up in the newspaper because it doesn't make for a great story. But again, I appreciate all of you and your input that you give at these meetings. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.